mama we, heyele ma, heyele mama we, heyele ma.
Hello and welcome to the program. I am Daniel Makukera for discussion the Middle East conflict. This is the world commemorates the 40th anniversary of the Six-Day War when Israel took the West Bank, Gaza Strip and East Jerusalem in 1967. It's come at a time when both the security situation for both the Israelis and Palestinians has deteriorated. The violence and counterattacks by each side continue. To this day, despite a barrier wall that has been built by Israelis to separate the two. Palestine militants continue to fire out some rockets towards Israel. In return, the Israel authorities have conducted targeted assassinations against Palestinian militants, arresting and imprisoning some ministers and legislators. Israeli officials have rejected any substantive talks at present with the Palestinians on statehood, noting that their government is led by Hamas, which has rejected Western demands to recognize the Jewish state. Another cause for concern among Arabs is the danger posed by Palestinian factional violence among Palestinians themselves, in which some 50 Palestinians have been killed in recent weeks. The question is, will there be a solution to this crisis? Well, joining me to discuss the commemoration itself and other issues in the studio, Mr. Salim Vally, who is a spokesperson for the End the Occupation campaign in South Africa, and Mrs. Rolene Marx, who is a researcher for the South African Zionist Federation. To the both of you, welcome to the program. Now, maybe I should start with you, Mr. Vally, and say, jog our viewers' memories as we talk about this commemoration 1967. In a nutshell, what is happening?
Well, the point is 1967 came after the ethnic cleansing of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. Palestinians today form the biggest refugee group in the world, millions. And this ethnic cleansing started a long time ago, before 67, 1948. In 1967, more Palestinians were forced into exile, made refugees, as well as internal refugees. It was basically a land grab. We see the continuation of security concerns as a pretext.
Land grab, forced into being refugees, really fleeing their land by whom?
By the Israeli state. I mean, this is a state that is predicated on expansionism. 3 years ago, the International Court of Justice ruled that the apartheid wall, which on its completion will be over 700 kilometers long and 8 meters high.
The United Nations called it the apartheid
International
wall.
Court of Justice, absolutely.
Court of Justice. Okay.
And that takes even more land away from the Palestinians. There are roads which are Israeli settler roads alone. Palestinians cannot go there. Now, all of this has reduced the Palestinians into small Bantustans, basically. So in our country, like people around the world, 20,000 people in our country on Saturday marched, had rallies. We represent the vast majority of South Africans. The South African Council of Churches, the African National Congress, the Congress of South African Trade Unions are all part of our campaign to say that for us to have peace, a just peace, Israel needs to abide by international law, which says that they must withdraw from the 67 border areas.
They must withdraw from the 67 border areas. Before we go to that, Rolene, I just want to hear whether you agree with the presentation of facts by Mr. Vally on 1948 to 67, and of course we'll continue talking about the ongoing conflict.
I'd like to clarify it from the Israeli perspective. In 1947, the United Nations put forward a partition plan in which they would separate the British Mandate of Palestine into a state for what was then Arabs, because Palestinians only really came into existence as Palestinians in 1964 with the founding of the Palestine Liberation organization, and they put forward land which would become Israel. The Israeli government at the time accepted the partition plan, and the Arabs did not. What resulted was a war for the extermination of the Jews. The minute that the State of Israel was declared, multiple Arab armies attacked Israel. It was not a land grab. What happened was that Arab leaders at the time said to their Arab populations, we encourage you to leave this land until we have driven the Jews into the sea, until we have exterminated the Jews. Cut to 1967, and what happened was a defensible war. Israel got the territories which were at the time, Gaza was governed by Egypt, and the West Bank fell under Jordan. Because the Jordanian and Egyptian armies were part of the multiple armies, again, who fought in a war of extermination against the Jews and were defeated. It was land that was taken as insecurity, to provide Israel with some kind of security. But Mr. Vally touched on something important. We need to start negotiating peace. We can go back and look at history, which is very important in context, but history has happened. And what we sit with today is two nations desiring nationhood. And what we need to start concentrating on is how we move towards peace, how we resolve the conflict so that Israel becomes a legitimate, recognized sovereignty within the Arab world, and that the Palestinians who deserve their own nation are able to form the Palestinian state, living next to Israel side by side in peace.
I see Mr. Vally is shaking his head in disagreement.
Absolutely, yeah.